Today, the Supreme Court heard arguments in a case about whether or not Colorado can exclude former President Trump from the Republican primary ballot in that state. The case centers on the 14th Amendment, which you may have heard a lot about by now. It states if you commit an insurrection against the Constitution or our country, you can be disqualified from holding office, federal or state. It applies to both current and former office holders as well. Dr. Patricia Krause, a political science professor from the University of New Haven, says it's been used a few times over the course of history, but very few times. In fact, the last time was over 100 years ago.
It's been used a total of 8 times. The majority of those came post-Civil War because the amendment was originally put in place to keep people who were still sympathetic to the Confederacy out of government. So that's why it's even in the Constitution. And then we had a case in 1919, and then there's this most recent case was in New Mexico, where a council member was actually removed by the courts because of his involvement in the January 6th insurrection.
Now, Colorado is arguing that it has the power to control its election procedures, such as they're using the 14th Amendment to try to disqualify President Trump from the ballot. But Dr. Krause says because Colorado is pulling it from the U.S. Constitution to make that argument, things get more complicated.
The Colorado Supreme Court was using something that's in the Constitution to justify the action of the state. It then becomes the purview of the Supreme Court, because once you start using amendments and clauses in the Constitution, then the Supreme Court has every right to oversee that.
Now, during the hearing today, many of the justices, those who were appointed by Democratic and Republican presidents, expressed skepticism over Colorado's argument and worried about the implications that it could mean if a state is allowed to remove candidates.
You know, a goodly number of states will say whoever the Democratic candidate is, you're off the ballot, and others, for the Republican candidate, you're off the ballot. And it'll come down to just a handful of states that are going to decide the presidential election. That's a pretty daunting consequence.
Several states have or are challenging Trump's name on the ballot. The states in red, Colorado and Maine, have decided that he is ineligible. The ones in orange dismissed or rejected a challenge, and the ones in blue, that's where decisions are pending. And that's why many are watching the High Court's decision very carefully. And careful is exactly how Dr. Krause believes the court will be delivering their decision.
Part of what I think they won't say is whether Trump is guilty or innocent of participating or engaging in an insurrection. You know, I think they're going to completely steer away from mentioning sort of Trump, I think, specifically in terms of what happened on January 6th. I think they're more likely to focus specifically on Colorado and what Colorado used to make their decision and whether that's constitutional or not.
Now, Trump has legal cases pending that deal with January 6th, so Dr. Krause says the court is being mindful of that as well. She hopes whatever the outcome, people take the time to educate themselves on the subject and not just use it to further drive a political wedge.